All right, today you're going to be creating an 8-step value scale. 8 steps because there's 8 different tones from white to black. It's referred to as a full range of value. What you're going to be learning is that in a value drawing, to create realistic form, you need everything from white to black and all the grays in between. We're also going to be learning that there's certain names for those tones. The white of the paper is always the highlight, the darkest area is the black point, and then there's light and middle tones in between. Then we're also going to be learning about reflected light that bounces off of a surface back onto an object, and then the shadow that's cast by the object to make it look more realistic. So that's down the road. But for now, I need you to have some practice just with making the tones themselves. Okay. So the first step is going to be to set up our boxes for our scale. Right, so I'm going to recommend that you rip a piece of paper out of your sketchbook because it's easier to draw with the ruler, and you probably want to rotate it in whatever direction is more comfortable when you're adding in the tones. Okay, so the easiest way to do this, if you have a ruler, is to take your paper horizontally. We need it long enough to fit our 8 boxes. Okay, they're going to be an inch a piece. So take your ruler, lay it across. I like to leave a margin of some sort on top, so I'm going to bring it down a little bit, line my ruler up against the edge of the paper, and I'm going to make parallel lines. So you're going to trace the top of the ruler and the bottom of the ruler. Okay, whatever thickness your ruler is fine. Right? Now, while it's in place, I have my 0 point on the edge of the paper, so I'm just going to go through and mark off every inch until I have enough for my 8 boxes. I'm going to leave, just like I did in this one, a margin on the side. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 boxes. Okay. Now we also want a marking on the bottom. So if you have a ruler like this, then it becomes really easy because the inches relate directly to the top. So you could just make a mark every inch from here. If you don't have a ruler like that, or there's centimeters in the bottom, then you can just slide this down like that, and then make sure your 0 point is lined up on the edge, and make all your markings. Always mark both ends of something when you want to draw straight lines. Don't just eyeball it and think that you're good at assessing the angle of it, because you're not going to have rectangles. You're going to have strange angles, and they're going to be parallelograms instead. Okay. Now, if you don't have a ruler, then here's a quick and easy way to get your boxes. Right. Take your cover of your sketchbook, right, and you can use that for the straight edge. I'll bring this up a little bit. You can use that on the top and the bottom as a straight edge. So just like this. And then you can just judge how far down to go. Don't make it too narrow. That looks pretty good right there. Make it as parallel as you can. That'll be my bottom line. Okay. Now we need a consistent measurement for all of our markings. Okay. So rather than just eyeball those or just randomly make marks that you think are the right spacing on here, okay, what you can use is a quarter, because it turns out that a quarter is almost exactly an inch wide. Okay. So rather than just take the quarter and make marks and slide it along, this will be easier. So if you take your ruler, line it up, quarter, line it up on the edge, just make a really obvious marking. Make sure you line the edge of it up more or less to where you just marked. And I would just go further than what we need for this project. You might need a ruler for another project too, and it will always be in your sketchbook. So you can do this all the way through. Marking is a little curved because it's following the curve of the quarter, but it'll be fine. Just like that. And then you can go through, line up the 0 point just like with a ruler, and then you can make your marks all the way across, and then at the bottom also. Okay, so however you do it, you want to set up your parallel lines and your markings on the top and the bottom. And then with a light line, okay, not too dark. We don't want dark outlines between our boxes. You're going to go through and line up all your points. Until you end up with your 8 rectangles. if your lines come out very dark and you're, no offense, but the word for it is if you're heavy-handed and all of your lines that you ever make are dark, what you're gonna have to learn is you want to ease up on your pressure, and you don't want dark lines when you're drawing because they're much harder to fix, and a lot of times they make grooves in the paper, and even when you erase things, they show up later when you're adding value or you're adding color. Okay, so just ease up a little bit on your pencil, and it's gonna make things a lot easier as we go forward. All right, so here's our grid. You could take the time to erase these extra lines if you want to. I'm gonna leave them for now. You could have yours. We're gonna have to do some erasing of the value that goes beyond the edges anyway. Okay, so you want 8 rectangles. Okay, now the first one, I don't have it on here, but just to be really clear, I'm gonna put a W over that one. That's white. Okay, that one's done. Congratulations, one of your squares is done already. Okay, just like I showed you in the value drawing, you always want to leave some area of your object white. That's the highlight, okay, cast by the light. All the way down here, box number 8 is gonna be B for black, okay? That is the darkest value that you can achieve. That's the black point, all right? Now, you're only gonna use one pencil, okay, for all the tones in your scale, all right? So the silly question is, wait, hold up, Beck. That's a really dark graphite. How do you expect me to get, shouldn't you give me lighter graphite for those ones there? So the obvious answer is, and I kind of Freudian slipped and said it already, was pressure, okay, pencil pressure. So the really dark tone is full pressure. Don't break the pencil point, but you want to press really hard with it, okay? And you want to be as gentle and just barely touch the paper with your pencil to achieve that off-white, that really light tone, okay? So there's a few keys to get some quality results with this scale, all right? The first one is you want smooth, gradual changes in value all the way up your scale, okay? You don't want a big jump from light tones and all of a sudden it gets dark, all right? Think of it like a staircase. If the staircase is made well, you don't have to think about the stairs being evenly spaced, okay? You usually don't even have to look down at the stairs. You can run up the stairs, run down the stairs, okay? So you want them to all be evenly spaced, right? That's tricky, but you're gonna practice, right? The next thing is you want smooth, even, solid tones in all of your rectangles, okay? You don't want your pencil strokes to show, so I'm gonna show you some techniques for hiding. It's called hiding your pencil strokes, okay? You want solid areas. You don't want patchiness. You don't want scribbles, right? Now, the first thing, don't use a mechanical pencil. Mechanical pencil has sharp, pointed lead, all right? When you try to create a tone with that, you see all your individual pencil strokes as you go, okay? It becomes really difficult to hide the pencil strokes and create solid, smooth areas of value, okay? So don't use a mechanical pencil for this case. When we lay out drawings and when we create the contours of a drawing, and for a contour drawing itself, mechanical pencil is great, okay? But when you're creating value in a drawing, never use a mechanical pencil, right? You also don't want to use the actual pencil point when you're adding value for the same reason that the strokes are really obvious, okay? And they're much harder to hide, even if you're going slow and careful. Some of the white shows through and you can see all the passes of the pencil, okay? So what you wanna do, and this might feel a little funky in the beginning, but again, it'll get easier with practice, right? You want to use the width of the pencil rather than the pencil point, okay? So you don't wanna hold it up and down like when you were drawing those lines, when you write your name, or when you're drawing in the first place, okay? You want to have as much of the side of that graphite touching the paper as possible, okay? It's like if I give you a big piece of poster board and a crayon, and I said, fill up that whole poster board with a nice, smooth, solid color, okay? A lot of you would just rip the paper of the crayon off and use its side, and it would save a lot of time because it's much wider, okay? But it would allow you to control the pressure more so than if you're just using the end of the crayon itself, okay? So we want to use the width. So there's two ways to do that. You can just slide your hand up from how you would usually hold it, like this. Okay, so on its side, like that. Okay, or I learned this in college when we were drawing on easels. Okay, but this allows you a lot of control over the tone, especially for those lighter tones. So you could either hold it like this, or you could just slide up and hold it like that. Try both ways, okay? I'm gonna recommend that you just practice holding the pencil and creating some different tones before you even start in on your value scale, okay? That way you can practice the technique before you actually start to apply it, right? You could even create a quick set of grids and create a practice value scale before you do the real thing, okay? The goal is to improve the results, make these techniques more comfortable for you. So if you need a step or two of practice, then take it, okay? You want high quality results, all right? Now, as you are filling these rectangles in solid, okay, you want to use long strokes, so from side to side or end to end, okay? You don't want to use short, choppy strokes in just areas because it becomes patchy and it's a lot harder to hide. Okay, also, a good point is this table underneath me has some nicks in it, so I would recommend putting something underneath. So open up your sketchbook. That way it'll be a nice, smooth, soft surface underneath. It'll be a lot easier to get nice and smooth, okay? So rather than choppy, and this is my off-white, so I want to be really gentle with this pencil pressure. So side to side. And one of the techniques for going side to side is rather than just pivot with your fingers like this, okay, that's going to give you those short, choppy strokes. Start to pivot with your wrist, okay? That'll come in handy when we're drawing circles that will become spheres or just circular forms in general. But start to get in the habit of pivoting more like your wrist. And it's always better to err on the side of things being a little bit too light and then realize that and go back and add more pencil pressure than to have things too dark, okay? If you end up with something that's too dark, right, it's not impossible to fix, okay? But you want to use a large flat eraser, okay? For the same reason that you don't want to show strokes, okay? So if this was a little bit too dark, I wouldn't want to come in with a sharp pointed eraser because you're going to see all the areas where the eraser has been, okay? If you use it more like a sanding block, if you're sanding wood, okay, and move it back and forth just really gradually, okay, not a lot of pressure, you can take away some of that darkness and bring it down a tone or two, all right? So that's another helpful technique, all right? Now, scribbles is the opposite of what we want, all right? So you have to, as I represented already, I didn't get very far in this video with the value itself, okay? You have to go slow. You're gonna be able to see the race if you just scribble and get this done on the quick side. Okay, so be really slow and methodical with your pencil pressure as you develop your tones, okay? As you develop your tones, okay, have an extra piece of paper for a buffer, all right? That is so that you don't, so if I'm working on one particular area, all right, some people try to levitate and just have their hand off the page. That's not comfortable, right? You want a nice sturdy spot for your hand to sit, all right? So just an extra piece of paper. Printer paper works great because it's smooth and it doesn't pick up the graphite. You might notice it's a little dirty when you're done with it, all right? But it's a lot easier to clean up than if you get the graphite in your hand and you're leaving prints all over the place, okay? Or you smudge, all right? Now that brings up a good point. Do not smudge your finger to smooth out your tones, okay? That's cheating. You have to develop the skill with the pencil and pressure and hide your strokes with the technique to create solid areas, all right? Some people think the smudge is a magic wand and they're awesome at value and they lay something down and swipe it and it's not correct. Okay. There's materials we're going to use like colored pencil that you can't smudge, right? You can't smudge that pigment, right? So you're going to have to develop the skills of pencil pressure to create your different tones. All right. As you create your scale, just to get a sense of if things are the right tone or not, right? I recommend either take a step back and create some more space between you, your eyes, and the scale itself, right? Or you can hold it up at arm's length and also get some space away from it, right? So with these techniques and tips, you're going to complete your value scale, right? It's up to you what direction you start in. And some people like to start on the end points and work their way towards the middle. Some people, the opposite, like to start with a middle tone and work their way towards the end. Okay. Some people like to get that really dark tone in and work your way. So it's completely up to you how you progress through this. Okay. But remember the key points. You have to have gradual changes in your tone as you make your way all the way up. Okay. And you have to hide your pencil strokes. So smooth, careful application, and make sure you're holding your pencil in the proper way, because it's going to make hiding your strokes, instead of having these short choppy strokes, thin strokes, it's going to make it a lot easier. Okay, so I'll let you get to it and good luck.